All right, guys, today we are tackling one of the most iconic Ninja Warrior obstacles ever, and that is the salmon ladder, which you can see behind me. Now, this obstacle is a perfect opportunity to go over the 6 ninja moves, which is a training philosophy that we teach here at Ninja Obstacle Academy. See, we don't teach obstacles here, we teach movements, and there are only 6 ninja moves. If you can learn these 6 ninja moves, you can combine and modify them to tackle any obstacle in front of you, whether you've seen it before or not. Now, if you watched the previous video where I talked about rope climbing, if you watched all the way to the end, you'll remember that I covered a movement called a dyno, and specifically a glide kip in a previous video as well. That movement, the dyno, is one of the 6 ninja moves, and it's exactly the one that we're going to cover for today's video. Now, if you're familiar with rock climbing, you know that a dyno is like when you throw yourself from one hold to another hold, and it's typically a big dynamic movement. And it's the same thing here, only with ninja. Oftentimes you're doing it without using your feet, and you're kind of hanging and swinging. So anytime that you're throwing yourself upward or backward doing this type of movement, that's going to fall into dyno category. So naturally, the salmon ladder is going to fall into that category as well. But enough about philosophy, let's just get into it. Now, a lot of the time when I teach people that are new to Ninja Warrior, they assume that it has to have a lot to do with upper body strength and relying on big biceps and things like that. And that can be true. There's nothing wrong with that. What we teach here is a different method that is going to focus almost exclusively on a motion that we call the kip. So for example, if I were to do a pull-up, most people would go something like that, where they're going to be using mostly upper body to do this movement, and they're going to be pulling, obviously, to get their chin over the bar. However, that's going to consume a lot more energy because I'm having to use a small muscle group to do a lot of work to get that done. What we teach and focus on here is to use your core and your lower body to generate upward momentum so that you don't have to rely on using your upper body as much. And there are 2 reasons why we do this. The first reason is to make it easier for somebody to get started. If you assume that you have to have this extreme upper body strength to be able to do Ninja Warrior, a lot of people are going to disqualify themselves from even being able to give it a shot before they actually try. However, if you take that out of the equation and you teach people that they don't have to be super duper strong in their biceps to be able to do this stuff, and they can use their core strength and their lower body to make this easier, a lot more people are going to be willing to give it a shot. So a big part of this is just lowering the barrier to entry so more people will try the sport because it's cool and it's fun and everybody should do it. The other reason is much more practical, which is if you're running a 12 obstacle endurance course, you don't want to burn out your biceps right at the beginning, right? You don't want to be 3 obstacles in and going on salmon ladder trying to make it work. Because then if you have pegboard or cliffhanger or something else toward the end of the course and it's a big bicep burner and you've already burned them out on salmon ladder or some other kind of like devil stairs or something like that, well, you're kind of out of energy. But when you use the kipping technique, you save your upper body strength for later. So when I kip, I can generate the same or greater upward momentum by using my lower body and my core to do the same thing. So now let's break down how to go from absolute complete beginner to ready to rock on salmon ladder. So the first prerequisite is you have to be able to hang from a bar. If you can hang from a bar, you can move on to step 2. For step 2, you're going to want something that's kind of bouncy, whether it's a mat like what I have behind me or a trampoline or something like that, and you're going to do a movement that looks kind of silly. It's called a cockroach, and what you're going to do is lay on your back and you're just going to try and kick your knees up and your feet up and bounce up and down off your back. It looks something like this. Once you have that down, you're ready to move on to step 3. Now, once you've gotten the hang of cockroaches and you're doing those fairly easily and you're getting a good amount of height, now you're going to actually start trying to practice the kip up, where what you're going to do is after you've extended your feet up and you've gotten some elevation, you're going to try to lift your torso and shoot your feet down toward the ground. Looks like this. Once you have that down pat and you're able to do it from a springy or bouncy surface, the next thing you're going to do is move to the floor and start working on it there. Now, most people find that it's easier to learn this movement using their hands at the beginning. I personally prefer not to do that, but I'm going to show you how to do it both ways. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to lay onto your back and you're going to bring your hips over your shoulders. You're getting into almost a candlestick type position. If you're not familiar with a candlestick, it looks something like this. Once you're inverted, you're going to compress like a spring, so tuck your knees toward your chest, and then you're going to reverse. You're gonna let all that energy out. So you're gonna shoot your feet up as high as you can, and then you're going to elevate your hips, and then you're going to elevate your shoulders. Now, the higher you can get your feet and your hips, the easier this is going to be to actually cause that rotation. If you prefer using your hands on this, you'll just put them flat behind your head or by your ears on the floor, palms down. Once you're in that position, shoot your feet up, and then extend your feet out. You're gonna elevate your hips, and then you're going to bring the torso up. Where most people get stuck is that they're not actually going high enough when they are bringing their feet and their hips up. They're trying to rotate too soon and are just falling onto their butt. And remember here, guys, we're talking about salmon ladder, so all this is gonna tie in. This is just the beginning of the skill. But the key takeaway here is the higher you get your hips and your lower body, the higher you're gonna be able to get your shoulders following after that. Once you can successfully do the kip up on the floor, you're ready to move on to step number next. The next step is the glide kip, and we've already covered that on this channel, so I'm not gonna spend a ton of time here, but I do want to highlight that what we just learned over there on the floor with the kip up, the Bruce Lee thing, is the same thing. It's the same thing. Just to give a quick overview, the glide kip is where you go under the bar and then you go on top of the bar, and you don't have to bend your arms. It's like a pretty muscle up. The short and sweet version of how to do a glide kip is I jump to the bar, I approach the bar in a hollow shape, I'm going to extend my body out, then I'm going to curl my body up, I'm gonna bring my legs up to the bar, and then I'm gonna shoot and invert. As I invert, I bring my feet up as high as I possibly can, then my hips start to drop along with my feet, elevating my shoulders, and kablam, there we go. And kablam, there we go. Kablam. Kablam. The process of doing that is the same thing we did over there. I elevate my feet, and then I elevate my hips, and then when my hips and my feet go up and then start to drop, that's what causes my shoulders to elevate after the fact. If you're not quite sure what this has to do with salmon ladder yet, if you could go onto the bar like this, you would be able to reach very high up to the next rung. So if I use this approach and I intentionally lift my hands off the bar instead of hanging on and getting on top of it, can reach very high. Before we get into salmon ladder, I want to take just a second to thank the sponsor for today's video, SuperX. SuperX makes the most amazing training and workout gear that I've ever seen. It's incredibly comfortable. I'm wearing it right now, and it's all inspired by like nerdy superhero stuff. Like this is a G.I. Joe one this is a Snake Eyes outfit, and the material, guys, oh my gosh. This material right here is the most breathable and comfortable material that I've ever worn on any outfit ever. One of the things I love most about this stuff is the hoods, man. The hoods are so deep, they're so cool. They just did an Assassin's Creed line that had the beaked hood and everything. It was awesome. And they have an officially licensed Avengers release that's coming out next week. It's gonna be awesome. They got everything from Captain America. I've got an old school Captain America suit that they did that's incredible. It's one of my favorites. So if you're into fitness and you're into superheroes like me, you gotta check out SuperX. It's gonna be awesome. There's a link in the description of the video down below. You can check that out and type in code NINJA at checkout to get a discount on your order. Anyway, let's get back to salmon ladder. So we're finally here at salmon ladder, but I would like to clarify really quick. You do not have to have a perfect glide kip before you can do salmon ladder. You can absolutely do salmon ladder without having the ability to do a glide kip. That's fine. I am showing you my ideal progression from no experience to salmon ladder experience. This progression is how I teach most of my students. If I had somebody that was like, they just got a call, they're about to compete on American Ninja Warrior next month and they have to be ready, I would teach them completely differently. I would still show them all this stuff, but I would teach them a lot more shortcuts, and we can talk about those shortcuts. But the thing is, if you take shortcuts early, you create habits that are harder to break later on, and it becomes more difficult to learn these skills. But if you build these skills as the foundation, then you can always add shortcuts later, and you have the full arsenal of skills available to you rather than having to rely specifically on a huge amount of upper body strength to be able to do this. All that being said, let's get into the salmon ladder. So we've done the kip up on the floor, we've done the glide kip on the stationary bar, and now it's time to move on to this guy. What you'll see is I'm going to use the exact same shapes, the exact same timing, the exact same movements to be able to do this. The only difference is, instead of hanging on to the bar and just pushing myself on top of it, I'm just going to shrug my shoulders and move it. So it all comes down to elevating my hips first. I get my hips up, then I get my shoulders up. And if you watch closely on this next one, you'll see that I'm not even gonna bend my arms to do this. I'm gonna keep my arms completely straight. I'm literally just gonna shrug and move the bar over. And that's it. That's kind of salmon ladder 101. It comes down to elevating your lower body first and then following with elevating your shoulders. Now for 90% of competitors, that's really all you need. You don't need to be able to hold L's and rocket up a Super Salmon ladder. Now, if you do need to hold L's and rocket up a Super Salmon ladder, then absolutely you can do that, but even still, it's all going to go back to using your lower body. You're just kind of taking a shortcut. Instead of using long swinging motions, you're shortening the pendulum, and then we're getting into the weeds. I don't have to get into all the science right now, but the short version is you're using the same thing. It's still the same. Now, I am not Super Salmon ladder man. I don't have a ton of upper body strength. That's never been my strongest suit. I'm good at laches. I'm good at swinging and throwing big moves. That's what I do well. But for the sake of demonstration, I'll show you that even if you were training to do Super Salmon ladder and you wanted to rock it up and use your L's and all that kind of stuff, it's still gonna rely on the same principle. You're still gonna be using your knees to generate upward momentum and then pulling a little bit to reduce the amount of stress that it's gonna put on your biceps. That's it. That's Salmon Ladder 101. I was about to render the video when I realized I forgot to record an outro, so here we are. Anyway, if you found this useful or helpful, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, check out the other videos that we've done in the past. If you got questions, leave them in the comments. I will definitely get back to you. And again, check out Super X. They have an amazing Avengers launch that's starting next week. Use code NINJA at checkout to get a discount on your order, and I'll see you guys in the next video.